It's a numbers game with your host, Gill Alexander.
It's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
Hour number 2 of a numbers game right here at Visa, the Sports Betting Network, Sirius XM Channel 204, Visa.com, the Visa app, Fubo's Ling and Game Plus. How you doing? Hope you're having a good morning. Jason Kahn is here as well. Good morning once again to you, Jason.
Good morning, Gill.
Yeah, did the first hour feel like just a sort of a slow crescendo to this kind of sort of thing?
Like an appetizer.
Yeah, just like an appetizer. Because, there's not even a line for one of the baseball games. And, we just sort of talked about stuff. By the way, I just want to add one thing, not a clarification, but I want to give credit to the Le'Veon Bell story. The 3 teams that he's thinking about are the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Dolphins. Pro Football Talk was the outfit that reported that first. So shout out to Pro Football Talk there. Let us bring him in as we do each and every hour number 2 on Thursday. At Bill Crackman with K on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the great, iconic figure that is Bill Krackomberger. Good morning to you, Billy.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. This just happens to be your day. And we do this, for those tuning in for the first time, Bill and I do this unscripted each and every second hour on a Thursday. But something has come up, and there's definitely something that we want to talk about today. Now, let me preface it by saying it this way. So, first of all, let's set it up again. As people know who have listened to this show, I was joking about it earlier with Jason. I was like, have I ever mentioned that I bet Iga Swiatek to win the French Open ladies side? Obviously, I have, just a myriad of times. And we had literally 100 people plus on Twitter who betted along with us at different places. And it was the greatest experience and biggest haul and just a wonderful gambling arc. She couldn't have been more dominant as a long shot that we called way in advance, perfectly hedgeable moment, on and on and on. And so I went ahead and collected from all the places that I bet it, because I bet it multiple times. And in the end, one place didn't think they just said, no, we're not paying you because we have a rule. And the rule is why we're not going to pay you. Now, you're thinking to yourself, oh, was it a local bookie? Well, I don't bet with local bookies. Was it an unscrupulous offshore? No, I don't bet with unscrupulous offshores. Was it William Hill? No, William Hill actually paid me. No questions asked. It turned out to be the Westgate. The Westgate, which we'll get into momentarily, the rule on their books that they are quoting and saying, well, look, there's a rule. And as always, and I've said it 100 times, if not 1,000 times on this show, always check the rules of your sports book, right? I've said it myself. But I just want to establish 2 things. One, and this is tough to do in this day and age, Bill, because in a day and age where politics is so divisive, we've gotten to a point in the world where if there are disagreements in life, people no longer are respectful towards each other. What I'd love to do at our best here today is just discuss a basic disagreement that I have with the Westgate and still be respectful at the same time. Because let me just say this. I like Jay Kornegay a lot. Jeff Sherman couldn't be a nicer guy. Those are the 2 guys I dealt with in this particular matter. So there's not enough positive I can say about both of them, and I would assume you agree with that, Bill.
100%. Oh, no, there's only a couple books to go-to books in town, and they're one of them for sure. So, and those guys have always been really fair, really good, and very reachable. That's one thing in the gaming business that you just don't see a lot. Usually, a lot of executives, a lot of people that are in the gaming business, higher ups, they are hiding from any customers. They don't want to answer any questions. They don't want to talk to anybody. A lot of them just basically want to steal a paycheck. Not over there at the Westgate. Those guys are very reachable and obtainable, like you said. And, we like them for sure.
So what I hope to do here in this hour is lay out a gambling case study of me making a bet, winning that bet, and assuming that I was going to get paid on a bet. And hopefully we can all learn from this event, and then we can make our own interpretations about who is right and who is wrong. Everyone will have an opinion on that. And in the end, it's going to be adjudicated in some way. That's how this works. And so let me just say this before the ID, the station ID here. The bet at the Westgate was at 30-1 odds for $1,000 to win $30,000. It's Gill Alexander. It's Bill Krackomberger here on A Numbers Game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network, Sirius XM Channel 204. And the Westgate will tell you, and they're right to say this, where the number, the amount is immaterial to them, right? But that's what this ticket was for, just to give you some context about how a guy goes into a sports book and how news is conveyed to him and how that might change your brain in the moment, and then how you have time to sort of think about things and process it. But I believe I have quite a case here, and we'll talk about it. So here's the rule that the Westgate quoted me, Bill, that says, like house rules. Westgate rule number 1, all basketball, hockey, and baseball games must be played on the scheduled date and or location, city or geographic area, but not restricted to a specific arena or stadium, to be considered action unless otherwise specified on any Westgate Superbook house rules. Goes on to say, and here's the part of the rule that they are quoting me. Continuing, Superbook printed media or the electronic boards, football and all other events must be held within 8 days of scheduled date and or location, city or geographic area, but not restricted to a specific arena or stadium, to be considered action unless otherwise specified on any Superbook printed media or the electronic boards. If any of the above circumstances exist, the wager will be voided and refunded. So there it is. Must be held within 8 days of scheduled date. Football and all other events. So that's what they're saying. They said, look, it's there in black and white. There it is. We can't change the rule. The rule is the rule. You say it all the time. You got to check the rules of your sports book. So my first reaction to that is, that's interesting. Okay, there is your rule. Here's the deal, though. First of all, let's take it. There's like 3 levels of this, and then the first part of this, I want to go through my levels of why I think I have a case, and then after that, I want to go through how it affects everybody else. Because we'll just make the first part about me, and then we'll go to how it affects everybody else. So the first part is football and all other events. On the first tier of that, I could take the position and be like, all other events. Again, I don't see you say tennis anywhere in there. You just say all other events. And, their position would be all. All's a big word, right? It's 3-letter word, big word, all other events. I don't see tennis. You're claiming that tennis is part of that. Okay. There's a lot of people listening to this right now. They're like, well, Gil, they did say all. Then I said to myself, let's think about this for a second. What kind of equivalents are there here in this calendar year, this strange year of COVID? Well, there was basketball. And the NBA started at the time that it said it was going to start. And then, as we know, suspended its season and resumed in a bubble well after their season was originally supposed to end. And so Todd Dewey wrote a piece, just to sort of lean on something. Todd Dewey wrote a piece here on October 12th, 2020 in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And within this article, Las Vegas Sportsbooks lose big on Los Angeles Lakers NBA title. Some of the things that were written in this piece, a bettor at the Westgate placed a $10,000 wager to win $50,000 on the Lakers at 5-1 odds 3 hours before they acquired Anthony Davis in a June 2019 trade with the New Orleans Pelicans. Article goes on to say, also regarding the Westgate also took a $10,000 wager to win $17,500 at plus 175 odds on the Lakers last summer, and a $20,000 bet to win $28,000 plus 140 in September. Now, here is the Westgate in their own words, again, from the Vice President of Risk, Jeff Sherman, who, let me just say again, Jeff Sherman dealt with me when I walked up to the Westgate the other day, strolling on in, skipped a Malouin on in there, Bill, and they only gave me a refund and not my $30,000. Jeff Sherman was the guy who came out eventually, because I wasn't going anywhere, and just listened to me. And let's be honest, not in my best moment, because when it first hits you, you're not at your best. You're like, oh, your blood is boiling. But Jeff couldn't have been nicer. But here's Jeff from this article. Quote, from before the season, when they got Anthony Davis and people were thinking they were going to get Kawhi Leonard, there was steady support on the Lakers from then to the end. So again, let's review those two bets, the bets that we were just talking about. A bettor at the Westgate placed a $10,000 wager to win $50K on the Lakers at 5-1, 3 hours before they acquired AD in June 2019. And they took a $10,000 wager to win $17,500 on the Lakers last summer, $20,000 bet to win $28,000 in September. So in other words, before the 82-game schedule, they took futures and honored those futures. Todd Dewey confirms that that's his understanding as well. They honored those futures. And then even though the basketball season had changed, right, and turned into a different format, they still honored futures that were made prior to the original format of the season, futures bets. So then you might say to me, wait a minute, Gill, but at least it started at the same time. Their basketball season. Well, we'll go back to the Westgate language if we could in that rule. There's nothing about a start time, right? They use the word scheduled. Okay, so that's also left to a bit of interpretation. I don't see anything. First of all, I don't see anything about tennis, but then I don't see anything. It says scheduled date within 8 days of scheduled date and or location. So they might have started on time, but schedule completely changed. Location completely changed. They end up playing in a bubble, right? Like completely different. But let's say you're of the camp where you're like, well, Gill, but again, it started at the same time. So, that's their thing. They're probably inbounds. Okay. Let's think of something else. How about baseball? Baseball didn't start at all at its regularly scheduled time. Baseball started well after it was supposed to start and was a 60-game schedule that started well after, right? Months later. Is there any evidence that the Westgate honored those futures? Well, as a matter of fact, there is. Let's go to another Las Vegas Review-Journal article, also by Todd Dewey. This one, June 24th, 2020. And in that article, again, trying just not to do any interpretation, but to use the Westgate's own words, what you have here is, a lot of things in the article state, well, yeah, these sports books, they're refunding season win totals bets. And they're refunding player props and playoff props. But goes on to say, all pennant and World Series futures bets remain live at Las Vegas books. Here's a quote from Westgate Sportsbook Director John Murray. Quote, World Series and pennant futures are still alive because we still expect them to crown champions. Murray goes on to say, there's going to be an American League champ, a National League champ, and a World Series champ. And I would argue there's also going to be a French Open champ. If you're paying out futures for basketball, and if you're paying out futures for baseball, and those sports have inherently changed in the ways that we just outlined, why are you not paying out futures for the French Open? And that is the headline of a case that has other tentacles, which we'll get into momentarily. But I'll just start that as a headline, Bill. That's my position on this. Your thoughts, sir?
I did not know about these. We spoke only briefly because you wanted to save it for on air. Mm-hmm. So I didn't. These were the things you had, which I did not know. I just was told that they didn't pay out. They canceled all futures. That Jeff, Ed, and John came onto. By the way, they came onto different platforms, VSiN being one of them, talking about these different events that were canceled and the refunds that were being given. It looks like for these two major sports, they did not. And the wording on the original graphic you had up about the sports being canceled was in black and white, I guess, but they didn't specifically say this, baseball, obviously baseball and the NBA I can understand because it started on time. It did start back then. There's the graphic here. Yeah. 8 days of scheduled day. Okay. So maybe the basketball, now that I'm seeing it here, I don't get it because the game could have changed too. Let's give, for example, the New York Yankees. The Yankees, to win the World Series or to win any kind of playoff game, they were also a different team back then in February, March, and April, when baseball's supposed to start, they were a different team. They were a little bit banged up compared to when they came back and started baseball. I guess they started. What would they start around June? Baseball, did that start up around June? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, June.
Was it June? Late June? Something like that.
Okay, so late June. So they were a different team. They were a healthier team, which probably should have meant that the odds would have changed when baseball started also. And that was my that was my thought process thinking for the French Open. I'm not a tennis bettor, so I really don't know too much about this. But I'm told one of the Williams sisters, I don't know which one, she was going to play in the original French Open back in May. When you made the bet in May, correct? Before May?
Well before that, yeah.
Well before, okay. So and now, of course, she didn't play, and she would have been the big favorite, or 4-1 favorite, whatever it may be. So that would change the odds on all the other players, also participants. So it was a gray area there, and that first rule there that I'm reading right in front of me looks like it covers everything. Football, and all other events must be held 8 days scheduled to the date, geographic city area, but not restricted. So I'm reading this rule. It looks like even football futures would be. No, they actually football did start on time. I'm sorry.
Let me interrupt for a second, because again, the point that I'm making is, right, if they're paying out futures of other sports that got inherently altered in every which way, right? Basketball, okay, it started at the same time. Baseball, no, that didn't start at the same time. Whichever way, they, in their own words, are paying out those futures. I'm sorry, why is that different for the French Open? And let's go back to the first part of this rule, because I can see the Westgate coming back and saying, wait, you're skipping the first part of this rule where we meet out basketball, right? They meet out basketball, baseball, and hockey, and then they go to football and all other events. But they're talking about basketball, hockey, and baseball games must be played. Games, not futures, which they've said in their own words they're honoring. So their rule, to me, is not at all what they're claiming it to be. And I guess also part of this is that we are now in legalized jurisdictions in America, right? Nevada has been before the undoing of PASPA, or PASPA being ruled unconstitutional in 2018. But let's face it, everybody's got to step up in their game. If legalized jurisdictions want to distinguish themselves from non-legalized jurisdictions, which they love oh so much to criticize, well, your rules shouldn't require an archaeological dig, first of all, and they shouldn't require a law degree to try to parse out the words. Because think about the levels I just talked about. There's a lot of vague wording here. There's a lot of interpretation. And quite frankly, the rule that they're quoting, I think, is completely wrong when it comes to what their actions were afterwards. You cannot have a rule that you supposedly are going to hide behind and then behave differently on what you pay out. Now, there's a lot. That's my position. By the way, you and I both talked to, it's funny, while I was doing primetime action last night, Alan Boston called me, and he said that he had spoken to you. I couldn't answer the phone because I was on air. And then he texted me afterwards that he had spoken to you, so that's how I knew. Talked to you for just a brief time, but we said we're going to do this all on air. We're going to do it spontaneously. But I called Alan. And Alan, who I consider to be, like, he'll tell it like it is, right? And I'm just using him as one example. And Alan's first reaction to me was, he said, Gill, you don't have a leg to stand on. You know how Alan talks, right? He's like, Gill, you don't have a leg to stand on. And so I started talking. He goes, however, he said to me, he goes, however, in my opinion, what's really at issue here is that the Westgate had 5 months to inform people in all kinds of ways. And when I told him that what you just said about them, but they were on Visa and saying stuff, he goes, I don't give a how Alan talks about them being on Visa. It has nothing to do with the Westgate. They had their website to do it on. They had their app to do it on, because surely within the 5 months, I would have stumbled on it on their app, right? They also have the names and the information of everybody who made bets on an event like the French Open. They could have, personally informed those people. Now, the Westgate's position is, what do you expect us to do this? Yes, you know what? Time to think differently. If you are running a shop now, right, do you have no burden to inform folks. And so Alan's position at that point was, you know what? If they're smart, they pay you half. And then I said, is it my turn to talk? And he said, sure. And I said, Alan, I went through the whole thing I just went through with basketball futures and baseball futures. And there was a long, pregnant pause. And Alan goes, oh, you should get paid every penny. These people are trying to blank you. And I said, yeah, it feels like I'm being hornswoggled. And I don't like to be hornswoggled. And he said, forget hornswoggle, you're being blanked. So that's one man's opinion. We're going to let that linger for a while. At what point does the sportsbook have some sort of responsibility, some sort of burden to let you know, hey, if you want to bet this again, just letting you know this is happening? Or they just remain quiet and hide behind this rule, which I'm already saying inherently your behavior already cancels out by what your actions have been as a sportsbook afterwards. By the way, it should be mentioned, and we'll get into this after the break, Bill, that for everyone who didn't have an Iga Swiatek and Rafael Nadal French Open ticket, those people are entitled, according to the Westgate, to refunds. Except here's the thing. None of those people know that they're entitled to refunds. None of them. Because the Westgate doesn't reach out to those people. So those people think they've lost. Many of those people have just thrown their tickets away. So guess where that money goes? You got it. Stays right where it is. That is the problem with all of this. We got to do better if we're going to have legalized jurisdictions in this country. And Nevada got to do better than everybody. And we suck right now. Coming back on a numbers game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Bill, sorry, I had to lay it all out, so apologize that you didn't get to talk that much there. But, let's talk. So that's my personal disagreement with the Westgate. But let's just talk about some of the other things here real quick. Again, the people who didn't have Iga Swiatek or Rafael Nadal probably threw away their tickets. By the way, they should file a lost ticket claim. That'll keep them busy. Send them into the Westgate because you're entitled to your refund, apparently, according to the Westgate. But let's think about this as it relates to the Masters. The Masters is coming up. The Masters, which was postponed from April to November. Now let's talk about other people and how this affects other people. Well, here's the thing. We're bettors. There's a tacit trust here. If we don't have trust, we don't have anything. And right now I can't trust what I'm hearing here, right? Because just like I had Iga Swiatek tickets all over the place, and again, everybody paid me but the Westgate. No problems. But there are people out there right now, Bill, unsuspecting, who have a Tyrrell Hatton ticket or an Abraham Answer ticket or pick your Masters long shot. And by the way, the chances of a Masters long shot coming through is far greater than Iga Swiatek doing the unbelievable thing that I predicted well in advance that she did, right? So there's a lot of people out there unsuspecting right now that with Masters tickets from the Westgate who are going to go through the same emotional gambling arc that they justifiably should be going through, which is, I made this prediction, I have a lot of conviction in. Oh my God, this player's looking really good. Oh my God, I'm in contention. Oh my God, I may win. Oh my God, I won. I can't wait to cash. And they're going to come Skip DeMalewin, just to quote that song from back in the day, into the Westgate. And you know what? Mine was $30K. Theirs might be $100K, right? Whatever it is. And they're going to come in there and they're going to proudly put that ticket up there and they're going to get robbed of what they deserve also. And they're going to hide behind this very vague rule, which says, yeah, 8 days and this and that and the other. And hey, sorry, we said it on VSiN. Hey, I got news for you. Because that was part of the thing that I was told. You're on VSiN. You didn't hear it on VSiN? Hey, I got news for you. I do 2 days a week here, 2 shows a day here, 5 days a week. Do you actually think I'm listening to VSiN the rest of the time? For goodness sake, when am I going to be able to watch 90 Day Fiancé? Like, I got to have some time away from this place. I didn't hear any of that, right? And not everybody listens to VSiN. Not everybody listens to where you think you're getting the word out. You got to do better. And so for those golfers who think they have Masters futures tickets at the Westgate that are active action tickets right now, to those people, a public service announcement. You don't. Save yourself the heartache of what I just went through. Bill?
6 days ago on my Twitter feed, I did an interview, which I do every week with Bleacher Report, and I actually posted a repeat of that on my Twitter feed. I retweeted, and it was about Tennessee Titans future, where we're talking about. And the sports book back in New Jersey had a different rule than the sports books out here. So I actually tweeted out, make sure you check your rules if you're betting futures with your sports book. So that particular situation came up. Well, here is the kicker. The same guy who bet the Tennessee one, my friend in Long Island, he also bet some master futures with FanDuel, which was almost a disaster because he had Dominic Thiem to the Super Bowl last year. They take these kind of crazy parlays. The Super Bowl winner, Kansas City Chiefs, Dominic Thiem, to Masters futures, and to the Yankees, and to the Dodgers. So, I mean, it's little payouts to win 60, 70, 100,000. Well, are we going on break?
We got 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. So he couldn't get an answer. They told him in person at the Meadowlands, FanDuel, yeah, the future on the does not count on the Masters. Where on the website, on the app, it said it does count. I'll tell you after the break how this wind up coming out. It's crazy hearing this.
I have a feeling they ruled in favor of the bettor, but I don't know. We'll find out from Bill next. Coming back on a numbers game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Alan Boston yesterday was like, I can't believe you're this calm. And I was like, oh, I wasn't this calm again at the beginning. I really wasn't. And Jeff Sherman couldn't have been a better gentleman about it. Jay and I had a talk. Didn't start well, but Jay and I came to a good place. They may feel differently now, but I hope not. I'm just trying to lay out, this is my position. They have their position. It's a dispute, right? Period. And Bill, why don't you finish your story? Because I'd like to say some more stuff, more tentacles.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sure. So it was amazing how I actually went to the app, the FanDuel app, and it did say that they were canceling. They weren't counting any of the Masters futures. And yet in person, they were saying, yes, he just was smart enough to go in there and ask. And I know a VIP host there. I called myself, and yes, they actually, I'm cynical though. I'm always thinking that these sports books, they want to see what's going to cost them the most, canceling it or keeping it. I know that's probably not what happens, but FanDuel decided to actually reverse the rules and say, yes, it does count. And he has some giant future. I'm telling you, bombs to win like 80,000, one for like 125,000. So he's got some giant futures to the Masters. And listen, I love FanDuel. It's one of my favorite books back east. They're very fair. They're very good with their they take bets. When I go back there, they take bets. Just like, by the way, the Westgate and Circa, these couple places in town, they take my bets. I'm betting maximum bets, and they're taking them. So anyway, so it's and again, very, very scary situation he had there with these parlays that came in already. You have to remember,
right?
The Chiefs won the Super Bowl, so he had legs of the parlays in to the future of the Masters, and which he's still alive now. So
well, and FanDuel made a decision. Whatever whatever you think their reasoning for the decision was, maybe it's just they figured out a marketing thing. This would be good for marketing. They made a decision that was pro bettor. Well, the Westgate, under Nevada jurisdiction, right? They're set in their way. Well, there's the rule. There's the rule. Sorry, there's the rule. And the rule, you see it right there. It's the rule. Yeah, your rule isn't clear. And for all the reasons I stated, your rule isn't clear. And in fact, your actions completely torpedo your supposed rule. But let's just talk about some other tentacles. Now the Westgate's not going to care about this part because they're just going for their black and white argument. But let me just say other parts of how this, this affects folks and someone like me who made a bet like that, and how people like me could also get screwed. So Jay did not deny when we spoke, and I won't reveal the whole contents of our conversation, but one of the things that was not denied is that this very rule that they have on the books, the 8-day thing that they're using in this case, which I've already, I think, made a good argument against it not being much of a rule, period. They say they didn't deny that they could change that rule, that next year that rule could be off the books anyway. So imagine that if they took it off the books, the very rule that they're citing now as why they shouldn't have to pay me or anybody else who has Swiatek or Nadal, they're also not denying that rule could go off the books. So imagine people in 2021 and beyond won't have to deal with this, but yet those of us who made a bet and won a bet and are not getting paid on a bet in 2020, we get screwed doubly if they do that. Okay? They don't care, though, because it's there now. Here's another thing that they think people should consider. And again, how the bettor in the end is a loser in the end by these actions, by these very, very vague actions where they're like, here's our rule. Nah, again, your rule ain't really how you're playing it. Because I had so much riding on it, decided I was going to make a hedge bet, right? So before the finals, I made a bet, pretty, substantial, but I'm not much of a hedger, so other people would have hedged more, quite frankly. So I'm saved by the fact that I'm not a hedger by nature, but even I hedged a little bit, right? And a little bit is actually a lot based on the amount of money that I was going to make. I happened to make it at a different shop. And so before the finals, perfectly hedgeable. It was a beautiful gambling arc. Plus 150 on Sophia Kenin. Now imagine, so by the way, I lose that money, but I wouldn't have hedged as much if I thought that I wasn't getting that money from the Westgate. Imagine if I had made that hedge bet, if you will, at the Westgate itself. Imagine if I had come up to the Westgate the day before the finals and I made a, multiple K bet, let's say, which is what I did on Sophia Kenin. They would have happily taken that bet, right? I would have lost it. Happily, I would have lost it because that means my big-time future would have hit. And then the next day, I would have come strolling on in there and be like, hook me up with my Iga Swiatek money. And they'd be like, oh, sorry, 8 days. You know how it goes. But thanks for the hedge bet. Again, stuff the Westgate doesn't care about, but just I feel is important to point out. These are the ramifications of books deciding in the way that they do, and in this state specifically, because Nevada, you got to get with it. Enough of this. Enough of this nonsense. You guys are already so primitive and way behind what's going on. And for you to think that your rules are actually clear, again, it should not require an archaeological dig. It should not require legalese. It should not require legal expertise or legal degree to figure out what you mean by your rules. And as Alan Boston said, at what point does the burden of anything fall on the books? And if you tweeted it once in your Twitter account, or if you came on VSiN to say it once, that don't fly. Sorry. You have your app to post it on the entire time. You have your website to post it on the entire time. Y'all failed to do all of that. We don't know. So you have no burden whatsoever. I know you regret this already. You probably should have made a better decision on letting me do this. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, you step aside from this and you're like, what is this? How do I really feel about all this? So I remove myself and all those other tentacles, how it affects other people's with Masters tickets. It's disillusionment. It's the fact that I can no longer trust, like disillusionment about the whole thing. Like, this is a major score in my betting career. And after doing everything right and hitting this big score, there's still a place out there that wants to put this barrier up to you cashing your ticket. And it's not the rule's the rule. Because your rule, as I pointed out in the first segment, doesn't fly because you paid everybody else out on futures. We'll wrap this up. Bill Krackomberger coming back on a numbers game at VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. It's Gill Alexander. Bill Krackomberger is here as well. We get tweets, and there's too many to read. Vegas regular, an amazing diatribe, my man. Couldn't have been presented any better. Awaiting response from the Westgate. Oh, they responded on Twitter here, and I'll be sure to read it. Let's see here. Sean Harness. If I'm a sports book, Gill's the last person I want to be against or something like this. You know he's going to investigate, do his homework, and articulate his side in a very compelling way. Hopefully people are willing to admit a mistake and not just because of bad press. So many people here just saying, give the man his money. And they're not complimentary of the book involved. Exactly 5 months. Pay that man his money. Unbelievable. Las Vegas 514. Alec Carlisle. I couldn't agree more with Alan Boston. You're getting blanked. Hope that ends up working out. Are there any options for you to take this a step forward? Oh yeah, there are options, and I will take those options. People asking about the Masters. We got to that as well. Dylan Esma. my thoughts exactly. It's hard enough to be successful betting without a book trying to screw you. I'm pissed off for you. Can't believe they would pull that BS. And a lot of people saying they'll never set foot in the Westgate again. All right, so the Westgate itself, let me give them here. Cyrus Gardner, by the way. Gill probably needs a lawyer, but probably doesn't need a very good one for this dispute. Against the very nice people at the Westgate. And I want to say that again, very nice people. Now, they probably don't think I'm nice anymore after this. But I'm just, hey, I told you I was going to come on. I told you I was going to tell you my argument. As to the losing tickets, he smells class action. I don't know about that, but Westgate lost my business. Chris Hannon. Okay, here's the Westgate itself. Because let's get into. Here's a tweet. Superbook Sports responding to Vegas T-Bone. Whenever you want to know the whole story, Tim, call Jay. He'll take your call. Really, the whole story? Oh, am I leaving something out? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did something happen that I don't know about? I'd love to hear the whole story. Jay Cornegay himself. It's very disappointing that someone would go to the airwaves and tell half the story. I gave your side of the story. There are your rules. That's the rule you quoted to me. That's why you're not paying me. I'm sorry. What else did I leave out? Did I miss something,
Quotes
Jason?
in the media.
Yeah, quotes in the media. I used their own words. Yeah, and by the way, if you had a tweet somewhere on someone's feed or mentioned it on VSiN, I've also covered that. It's not good enough. So anyway, there's the deal.
Gill, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The other books that paid you, I don't know who they were. William Hill, I'm sure you had a couple other ones. What's the reason why they paid you? Do you know? Do you know why they paid, or was it just within their rules that if it takes place in 2020, was it in their rules or?
Don't know. They paid me. Yeah, I think with William Hill it was 20, right? Westgate itself, again, they have different rules in other places. So when the Westgate says that, they're not lying, right? They're not making that up. This is in their rules.
Right.
And so, yeah, by the way, I didn't see it on the app rules. I didn't see that the first time I went through it. And Jay pointed it out to me, and he's right. There it was in the app, for sure. He's not lying about that, right? These are good people, right? Jay and Jeff, wonderful people. We just have an honest disagreement. And so it's not a question of whether the rule is there or not. The rule is there. I just think your rule is really vague on all the levels I just talked about in the first segment, right? I can dispute it in terms of, all right, well, the language doesn't really say tennis, but okay. Doesn't really say start time. It says scheduled, but okay. And then, and then I gave the basketball futures example, the baseball futures example. You can't pay out futures in other sports that completely alter their schedule and then not do it in tennis. And then if you go back to the rules and it says it parses out football and all other events with the other three sports, yeah, but you're talking about games, not the futures you're paying out. So your rules need to be redone a little more clear is, I guess, my point. So after all this, Bill, I mean, you could tell me. There's obviously going to be people that agree with the Westgate. There's obviously, even after this, there's going to be people who will be like, well, sorry, Gill.
Yeah, and, sports bettors in general, listen, we know the Twitter guys, even when I go after a certain company, which I did again last week, sports bettors they're going to always agree with, not always, but they're going to agree with me for the most point because they're sports bettors and they're tired of losing and they just want to go after anyone that's now you're not paying someone. I'm a loser. So automatically they're going to stick up for us in general. I seen one of our guys, Sean Higgs, he just put up a picture of Michael Douglas and Fallen on Twitter. So that was kind of cute. Just the way, standing on the bridge just with the
I want my breakfast and it's 10:34 a.m. Yeah, it's a great movie. Anyway, I get back to this. If you just, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill. Finish your thought.
No, they're gonna generally stick up for us in general, and I didn't know. I spoke to Jay also. He said this 8 days was on the app. It was on their website.
Yeah.
He said that
I'm not misrepresenting them.
He actually said the three guys actually came on to VSiN. They went to some other media, 1100 a.m. I think he said in Vegas here, and they talked about the futures being canceled.
So what?
You're telling me the baseball one they didn't they didn't cancel though, right?
No, they paid out all futures on baseball. National League, American League, which is about to be crowned National League and American League, and the World Series. Because as John Murray said in his own words, they crown an American League champ, they crown a National League champ, they crown a World Series champ. So they're about to pay those out in their own words.
It's tennis discrimination.
That's what it is. It's tennis discrimination, according to Jason Kahn. But look, in the end, let's pull aside from this, right? Okay. Look, I hope Jay Kornegay and I can have a pleasant relationship moving forward. Maybe we can. I would be thrilled to have one. We have a disagreement. I'm not going after these guys personally. I don't know how many times I can say I think they're wonderful people. But look, this is disillusioning. And it should be disillusioning to all sports bettors who have to realize, if it ain't one thing, it's another. And there has to be, and this is again the main point. By the way, this is not like that William Hill thing from 2 years ago. The William Hill thing was much worse because they tried to change like the rules in the middle and act like they didn't mean one thing and the other. That's something else, right? This is just black and white. This is how they feel. This is how I feel. In the end, you need some sort of trust that you don't need to be met halfway. Just meet me like 10% of the way, right? Is all the burden on the bettor? Does every bettor have to do what I did and do an investigation on, well, they said this and they paid out that and they did this? Like, right? You don't have any burden to put the French Open gets refunded on your app for the last 5 months during the pandemic?
As they hold your money.
As they hold my money? And by the way, like I wasn't in Nevada for most of the pandemic. I was in California. But eventually I would have gone on your app and seen, oh, wow, that French Open. But they didn't do anything like that, right? So, like, there's no burden on the Superbook to do that. Their language was vague. To me, it's irresponsible for them not to make it more clear. And quite frankly, I feel like it's a little dismissive, too. And I think that in the end, like when you just sort of step back and you're like, however this is adjudicated, whether I get it or not, and they have no intention of giving me my money. And I do mean my money. But however it's adjudicated in the end, I think that's the biggest takeaway. The biggest takeaway is disappointment and disillusionment. And it's sort of like, wow, if we can't cash in our biggest moments without a hassle, without some nonsense, what are we doing at all, man? Like, I hate to end it on that note, but it's like it really sucks. And if you're going to be legalized, if that was the big thing in this country, hey, yeah, we're going to legalize sports betting. Well, if you're legalized, that means inherently you have to be distinct from not legalized and unscrupulous offshores or locals and stuff like that. Don't just have your same version of trying to finagle out of stuff. If you're paying futures in other sports that got altered, pay them in all sports. End of story. And that's my case. So I don't know how you feel, Bill. You may not, by the way, you may not agree with me. Just because you're on the show, you may not agree with me.
It's a tough area here. They had these. I hope listen, I love you, Gill. You know that. I see the 8 days here scheduled on there. Jay told me he actually went on and talked about his guys talked about futures being canceled. It's really a gray, and its interpretation here is to the buyer here. Me personally, any futures I had, because I was talking to my friend in Long Island, we actually went and checked with to see if these things were going to be counted before the event started, because we just didn't know if they're paying out only a portion of this parlay, or they're going to use the big event, the last leg of the event, the Masters. So we checked ahead of time. I guess you just thought that automatically your tickets were good because you bet on a future. And obviously, at some of the sports,
not only did I think that, they were paying out in all the other sports. Why wouldn't I think that?
They meaning the Westgate was paying out.
The Westgate was paying out. Basketball and baseball, other sports that were inherently altered. Some not even starting on time, like baseball, just like the French Open. And basketball, a sport that ended up in a bubble, which is completely different than the French Open, which actually ended up being played on the same clay, right? Didn't affect so it's like, in the end, I researched all this stuff just to make sure. Did I remember this correctly? That they paid out all this other stuff? Yeah. I remembered it correctly. And there it is, in their own words. So we'll see. I'm going to pursue every avenue that I have. They have not heard the last of me. I'm sure they're going to dig their heels in on this. Great. I'm all for it. We'll figure out. And in one way or the other, it's going to be ruled either way or the other. But I think that just for a case study for betting, this was a worthwhile exercise to spell it all out and lay it all out. They seem to think I've only told half the story, which is fascinating to me, right? Okay. Yeah, half the story. I gave your side. And that's exactly your understanding of what their side was as well, right, Bill?
Listen, I talked to Jay, and we went over all this also.
Yeah.
You presented a good case here. Let's see what happens.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it as always. Thank you all for listening. Good luck with all your baseball bets from all of us at VEASAN, the Sports Betting Network.